Okay, everybody. Welcome to today's masterclass webinar, which is something that to me is a really powerful use of some of the skills we have, because some of these conditions, what they now calling body-focused repetitive behaviors, which we used to many years ago just call nervous habits, can be really self-limiting for people. And what can be included in these body-focused repetitive behaviors are things like nail biting and skin picking, all the way up to trichotillomania, which is hair pulling, to what's called Tourettes or Tics, violent involuntary muscle spasms. And they can be, particularly self-limiting. So has anybody ever worked with this type of thing before? Great, Tracy. How have you worked with it before?
Well, I've currently got a client that is doing the hair pulling.
Right. So it's a good idea to be able to pronounce trichotillomania.
Yeah.
Because when someone phones up and says, I don't know if you can help, my daughter is pulling her hair out. And if you turn around and say, oh, what do you mean, trichotillomania? They go, oh, you've heard about it. And suddenly you're perceived as an expert. So maybe a good idea to practice saying trichotillomania so that it rolls off your tongue. So, because it is a bit of a mouthful. I don't know who creates these words, but it's worth practicing that, because straight away, if you talk in that language, you'll be perceived as someone who's knowing what they're talking about. So Tracy, what are you doing at the moment with
that? She started out by telling me about traumas, so I've been working with traumas.
Yeah. Now, certainly trauma and the normal issues that we have, anxiety related issues, can play a part of this. And I'm not going to be teaching you how to work with trauma or anxiety today, because I'm hoping that you already have got that covered. So it's worth obviously working with the individual client in front of you, because some of them will have trauma, but some of them won't. So it's not just about releasing the trauma and suddenly these things disappear. Because again, what we need to remember and recall is, hang on, let a few more people in, is the idea of Hebb's law. Anyone heard of Hebb's law? Hebb's law is, it's a term from neurology. And what it means is that neurons that fire together end up wiring together. And so if someone has done a repetitive behavior over and over and over and over again, those neural connections will have wired together. They will have put in a set of train tracks, for lack of a better word. If you think of the metaphor of train tracks, once the person's on that train track, everything takes over, the brain takes over. And so the neurons have wired together. And if we just deal with the trauma or the anxiety, that is still there. So we need to do a rewiring job, which is what today's about. It's about doing a rewiring job so that we can really change not just the emotional side, but also the behavior itself. Because just taking away the trauma is often not enough. And this is one of the things I have a little bit of an issue with, people who just do age regression, and they think everything has a root cause, that somehow magically, if you remove that root cause, the behavior is going to stop. Well, maybe, but maybe not. It's better to do a rewiring job as well, because of this thing called Hebb's law. And the way we're going to do this is through sorry, Joe, yeah.
Will it be different for tics of functional neurological disorders, or will it still come under the same regime?
Still come under the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a baptism of fire with this particular way of working. I mean, been doing this, doing hypnosis and therapy for many, many years. And I'd done the typical nail biting type behaviors and things like that, and the sort of body focus behaviors like that. And then I got a friend of mine who I'd he runs one of the local round tables or Rotary clubs. And I went and did a speech there, and I did a demonstration of hypnosis. And he phoned me up and he said, I've got a friend, I don't know if you can help him. He's got something called myoclonus. Can you work with that? And I'm thinking, what the heck is myoclonus? I've never heard of that. Straight onto Google. And it's a big involuntarily muscle spasm. So my first question was, does it get worse at times of stress? And the answer was yes. So I thought, great, okay, at least there's something I can work with there. So I had this guy come in. And at the time I had a relatively small office with my chair and a desk and a recliner in the corner. And we started talking. This guy was in his 40s and he'd had this condition called myoclonus for a year or so. He had been going under a lot of stress at work at this time, and he was doing a lot of driving, and suddenly he developed this particular issue. So we're talking away and everything was fine. There's no problem at all. And I said to him, so what happens when you have this myoclonus? And he said, oh my God, it's almost like epilepsy, that my whole body goes into spasm and I'm completely uncontrollable. I can't control anything. And I said, right, okay. And how long does that happen for? You know, how long does it go on for? He said, well, like probably 2 or 3 minutes. So I said, all right, okay. And let's say for argument's sake, that were to happen here today, what do you want me to do? Now, I always think it's a good idea for us as therapists to be trained in basic first aid. So I think that's a really good idea in the first place. But he said, well, you know, if that's the case, if it were to happen, he said, it's probably not going to happen. Just let me ride it through, just stay calm, ride it through, and I'll come out. I went, all right, okay, no problem, brilliant, I can handle that. So we'd done the sort of pre-talk and I started to talk about hypnosis, and I just was about to start an induction, and oh my God, he exploded. I kid you not, he backflipped off the back of the recliner and got stuck behind the recliner and the wall, and he's now banging against the wall. And I'm thinking, I know he said leave him, but no. So he pulled the chair out, grab him away from the thing, pull him into the center of the room so he's not banging his head on anything. And I'm thinking, oh my God, let me go and check my insurance, make sure I've got insurance. Because I was like, really, wow, this is really bizarre. And so what then happened is we started to work together. And in the following weeks, when he would come in, I'd clear the recliner out of the room and he would bring in a quilt, like big blanket, and put it on the floor, and he would lay on the floor, and we worked like that. And the good news is we got resolution with it. But boy, that was not the fun way to start this type of work. Because this was like, it was unbelievable. The way he just literally backflipped off the chair. It's like, wow. So I decided I might want to do some more research on this. And so I looked into the research on tics, and I discovered this thing called habit reversal therapy. And it comes from quite an old book from about 1977 by Nathan Azrin and Gregory Nunn. Both of these are PhDs. And this technique is evidence-based way of working with these body focus repetitive behaviors. And if we look on page 2 here, and I don't want to read the whole thing out to you, but I want you to have a good read of it. But the research they did and the success rates that they got just with this method is astounding. And one of the paragraphs, it says, Nunn and Azrin found that a single 2-hour session of habit reversal therapy resulted in an average 90% reduction in the frequency of the habit, improving with practice to an average of 97% after 1 month. Over a year, if they still kept practicing, 99.5% overall. So this is really, really got some evidence behind it. Now, they didn't use hypnosis. They didn't at all address the underlying condition, and they certainly didn't use hypnosis. Now, what we know about hypnosis is that if you just take away the sort of idea that hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness and all this sort of thing, if you look at the research by people like Irving Kirsch calls hypnosis a non-deceptive mega placebo. Right? He called a non-deceptive mega placebo. And what he found was just introducing hypnosis and the word hypnosis and an induction into a session of CBT, the success rate of CBT went up through the roof. Because it's a non-deceptive mega placebo. So even if you just use hypnosis, but use habit reversal therapy as well, you'll increase the success rates. Does that kind of make sense? The hypnosis itself is a placebo, and it's going to enhance the effectiveness of whatever we do with it. So if we just take habit reversal therapy and we add in the power of hypnosis, ooh, it's going to be more effective because it's going to enhance their belief and expectancy. So this is what we're going to be doing. And I've worked with quite a number of people since then, since that issue, with all sorts of things, with Tourettes, various types of tics, trichotillomania, beard pulling. Most recent client has been with a beard pulling. And so basically researchers still consider this approach to be one of the most effective methods for breaking bad habits. So let's look at what we need to do. So first of all, when the client first contacts us, we obviously want to talk to them about the problem, whatever it particular one is. And we then set a date in our diary, whether that be working with them one-to-one or over Zoom or whatever. But then we want to send out to them, as part of everything we're going to do, a progress record, because we want them to become conscious of this particular thing. Because a big part of habit reversal therapy is by bringing it into conscious awareness. And the moment you can take these so-called unconscious behaviors and bring them into consciousness, just that in and of itself can reduce the incidence of it. And so it also provides then also a convincer for them that change is happening. Because if someone, when they initially contact you, is say, let's say they're having tics 50 times a day. If after a couple of weeks of working with them, they're now down to just 10 a day, that's a big improvement. But if you just said to them, like, are you still having tics? They go, yes, you might think that's a failure. But actually it's a massive increase, massive or decrease in that thing. So it's a really good idea to keep progress records, and just bringing it into consciousness is a really good idea. And this is the same as like when you're working with people with weight loss. You get people to keep a food diary of absolutely everything they eat, they'll eat less. So it's a really good idea to bring things into consciousness. So initially we're going to send them that. So if you want to just cut and paste that and send that out, you're welcome to do that, you know. And it's fairly self-explanatory. They write the date in there, the number of occurrences during the day before the treatment, and then after the sessions. And then as we're going on, we want to have a progress log, because and we also want to send them this. And obviously at this point, they won't know what exactly some of these things to fill in, but we want them to note the time, the context, and the location. Now, this is going to be really important. because again, like everything else, these things don't just happen randomly. Often there is a context and a trigger. So if we can get them to keep a log of when and where it occurs, we're going to start noticing a pattern. We want to have them notice what mood or emotion they're in at that time. Again, this will give us some clues. You know, if someone says, yeah, well, I was having loads of problems with my younger brother or my older brother was bullying me, and we know what's going on there. We need to then work with that particular thing. So some of the things in there are like competing response and the target behavior described. They're not going to know this at this point, but when they come in for the first session, we're going to run them through that. But again, you can take copies of that and just send it to your clients. Now, this page 6, this doesn't apply to everybody. If you've got a young child who's, I don't know, 7, 8 or 9 or 10 or 11, I would suggest maybe you don't want to use this. But if you've got an adult who's, say, 20 years old, 40 to 40 years old, and they're still doing beard pulling their hair or something, whatever it is, we need to get some leverage on them. Because just because a person turns up for a session doesn't necessarily mean they're motivated enough to do the work. And particularly when it comes to habit reversal therapy, we're not the one fixing them. They got fixed themselves. We're going to show them how. We're going to give them the tools how to do it. They've got to do it. Yeah. So we're putting the ball firmly in their court. They've got to do this work. And if they're motivated, they will do it and they'll be fine. So we need to ramp up the motivation. And I think this is a good idea with many of your clients. Don't just assume that just because a smoker turns up for a session that they're ready to quit, because they're not. Because if that was the case, they would have already stopped. So it's a good idea to get leverage with them. So what we're going to do is we're just going to ask them questions, and not some of these questions will apply to some people, some of them won't. So I'm not suggesting that you sit there and read out this as a script, but have a look at and just understand what you're trying to do here. So we want to do is identify any of the limiting beliefs or excuses that they use to support the behavior. Then what we're going to do is find out the consequences of having these beliefs or behaviors. So we're going to ask them, like, what's this behavior cost you? And have them really begin, what's this cost you in your life? Now, a lot of times if people with hair pulling, for example, it's going to, they're going to be wearing hats or wigs and things like this. It's going to be costing them confidence. They've probably got a load of shame about this behavior. So we want to ramp that up a little bit. What have they lost as a result of this behavior? How bad does that make them feel? What are the ways that this has affected their relationships? What unpleasant emotions do they experience on a daily basis as a result of this? And obviously, and again, shame is often a big one. And we really want to get the leverage going. Have them think about what this is going to cost them in the future if they don't stop now. Where will they be a year from now if this continues? Have them look in the mirror a year from now. How do you look a year from now, not having changed this? How has it affected your quality of life? And is this a price you're willing to pay? And of course, the answer will be no. We're now getting them motivated. We want to get leverage on them. You know, the old thing is if you've got a big, long enough lever and a big enough fulcrum, you can move the world. We want to get some leverage on them. So those are sort of sample questions that we would ask them. And then explain to them, look, everything has 4 parts. There's a cause, there's an effect. That provides a direction, which provides your ultimate destiny. And thoughts and beliefs are causes, and the effects, i.e. the consequences, they'll lead you in a certain direction, which ultimately will lead to your destiny. And if you change your beliefs about your capability, you can change your destiny. So we want to get some leverage going with them right off the bat. Obviously, we want to find out what the behavior is. You know, this is not content-free therapy. We need to find out what the behavior is. And then what we need to do is to start to identify the actions associated with the habit. Because habits do not occur in isolation from other behaviors or other actions. It's all these things, there are going to be preceding behaviors that will lead to it. So for example, with hair pulling and nail biting, often there's going to be face touching. Yep, that will start. That will be the preliminary behavior. With nails, it can be like staring at your nails. It could be rubbing the edge. It could be rubbing the cuticle. For some people, it could be rubbing their hand against their body or their arm or their other arm and feeling like a scratchy bit. This is all precedes the actual nail biting. Things like any type of face touching is often very common with these things. So rubbing your chin, resting on your chin, pushing your hair back, scratching face, scratching nose, all these things, have them become aware of these actions. Could be rubbing their eyes, stroking their beard. Beard pulling seems to, over the last few years, with loads of men wearing beards now, beard pulling is becoming one thing that's often coming in now. Sometimes it can be for people pushing stray hairs back. That's the preliminary behavior. So we want to have them aware of that. Now, when it comes to tics, tics often occur without prior behaviors. However, two types of action can be seen before the tic. Some of them can be what's called preventative in nature. So if someone's got head jerking, they may intertwine their fingers and kind of like hold their head as a kind of preventative. They can kind of feel it coming. Oh my God, I've got to hold my head. So there's that sort of thing that might be coming along. Sometimes if they've got, if their arm reacts, sometimes you might find them and they'll lean against something and press their arm against the wall so it doesn't go. So there may be those types of preventative behaviors. Other ones are concealment. So for example, if a person's head jerks to the left, often they might then position their body, if they're talking to someone, so that they're facing them from their left point. So if they jerk, it doesn't seem so obvious. So they can try and conceal it. So there's that sort of thing going on. They might reposition themselves in the chair after they've done that. It's almost as if, oh yeah, I meant to do that move. Yeah, so they've had a flip and then moved around in the chair and like acted as if nothing was happening. Now, if you've watched recent interviews of Michael J. Fox, you can see him doing this. Now, I know he's got Parkinson's, but he has these involuntary movements, but then he moves around in the chair. It's almost like that didn't happen. I did that deliberately. So these sort of concealment type movements, it's almost like they look as if they meant to do that. So we want to become aware of that. So we want to identify these actions associated with them. And then what we're going to do is we want to bring this into consciousness. So we want to do awareness training. So going over the page onto page 9, one of the ways in which we can do awareness training is to have them look in the mirror while they do it. And then kind of act it out slowly. And so it might be, let's say the person's got some form of tic, and they say, well, first my right shoulder jerks upward, almost touching my face, and then my right elbow slaps against my rib cage, and my right hand turns upward. They're now becoming aware of the actual movement itself. And when they start to concentrate on it, they can start to interrupt it. So we get them to ask, what are the various ways that I perform my habit? Have them write it out. Now, over the last couple of years, one of the things I've done, which I think is a really interesting idea, is to have them particularly people have been working at home. A lot of my clients have been working at home over the last 3 years because of COVID and whatever. So they're working at home, and these behaviors are happening whilst they're sitting in front of their computer. So they're pulling their hair, twitching, biting their nails in front of the computer. Now, so what I've had them do is to get one of these little cheap home security cameras that you can get off Amazon for about $20 or £20. And they plug them in and have them have it filming themselves. And now they can see themselves doing the behavior. Now that has a number of effects. First, it brings it into conscious awareness. But one of the other things it does is it creates dissociation. And when they play it back, they'll start to see how ridiculous it is. And it will give them more leverage. Now, I got this idea inadvertently from another trainer who some years ago did an experiment with the NLP fast phobia model. Does anyone know the NLP fast phobia model, like the movie theater technique? Yeah. Now, this trainer decided, he challenged himself to be able to do a spider phobia cure without talking to the client. See if it was possible to do the NLP technique without talking to the client. So he took the structure of the NLP technique, which is to have the person just sitting in a movie theater, watching themselves up on the screen, and then to float out of their body, watching themselves, looking down on themselves, watching themselves up on the screen. Yeah, so it's like two places dissociation. So here's what he did. He found some people who had spider phobias, like real bad spider phobias. He went off to his local pet shop that sold spiders. Now, I don't know if you know this, but spiders, like tarantulas, they shed their skins. And their skins look like spiders. Like basically the whole thing comes off. It's like a suit. It's like, ugh. And he got a box full of these. So he had a box, cardboard box with about 20 or 30 of these in. And because they're very light and they've got hairs on them, if you give the box a shake, they move. So what he did was he put them in, kept them in this cardboard box, wrote on the top of the box, spiders, had the room set up so he put the box on a table and he had a video camera watching where the box was. He then had the person with the spider phobia and he went, pointed into the room. So they go in the room, he shuts the door. And of course, they're standing around. And one of the perverse things about people with really bad phobias is they're kind of curious about the thing they're scared about as well. So they see this box with spiders on and they're like, oh. And of course, they can't help themselves. They open the box. They open the box, and of course, all these, like what they think is real tarantulas, start moving around because the box has moved, and the box goes up in the air, and they freak out, and run around the room screaming, right? All the time being filmed. So they're now screaming and doing that. He then opens the door, lets them out. He takes the SD card out of the video camera, puts it in a laptop, has them sit down in front of the laptop, and watches themselves freak out. And now they're thinking, that's fucking ridiculous. Look how stupid I'm behaving. Meanwhile, he's videoing them as well. He's now videoing them, watching themselves freak out. He then takes that SD card, puts in the thing again, and has them watch themselves, watching themselves freak out. Spider phobia went. So we can do a similar thing here. We can get that leverage so that they have this awareness. Now, again, this is not for every single client, but for some clients, it works an absolute treat, particularly if these are people who are working from home, who are doing this thing, and whilst no one else is there. I used this recently with a guy who's got a online gambling addiction. Had him put the video camera up. Stopped it, because there's this other thing. When you know you're being observed, it changes your behavior. You know this thing about in quantum physics, and I hate talking about quantum physics and what we do because it's too woo-woo, but the observer creates the reality type thing. Well, when a person knows they're observed, it changes their behavior. This is why in some shops you see cardboard cutouts of a policeman. You ever seen these shops with a cardboard cutout of a policeman? They're there because whoever walks in this unconsciously thinks they're being watched by a policeman. And the shoplifting rates go down. So just simply being aware, knowing that you're being watched is going to change the behavior. So this awareness is really important. So again, if someone's pulling their hair, they might write out, okay, well, first I brush my hair back with one hand, and then I kind of grab a few strands, rub them slightly, and then, so now they've got the awareness of, bloody hell, hair came out then. Whoops. You know, when you're getting old, when you're not even pulling it, it's coming out. So this is what we want to do. We want to get them aware of the behavior, bring it into consciousness. So again, from that point of view, it's kind of like weight loss. People are aware of their behaviors, it's going to go down. So then we're going to work with reducing their stress levels. Now, again, as Tracy mentioned, a lot of times people are going to have histories of trauma and anxiety. Now, again, I'm not going to teach you how to work with that because you're more than qualified to do that. So here's some of the things that we could do at this particular point is to lower their stress levels, lower their anxiety levels. We could teach them self-hypnosis. We could teach them EFT or TFT. We could teach them heart coherence breathing. We could teach them all sorts of things, methods for relaxing in the moment. We could teach them box breathing, because a lot of these tics and habits are going to occur when the person is stressed. So here's something else that we can do, and I teach this often now to clients, and I certainly teach it to all my anxiety clients now, and it's 5 different things that when put together really relaxes the entire nervous system. So what I want to do is I want you to run you through this so that you get an experience of what it's like. Hang on, just let someone else in, a late turner-upper. And so if you could, if you're ready, what I want you to do is just with your eyes closed, just what I want you to do is I want you to just relax your jaw. So if your jaw is tensed against your teeth, just relax it. So drop your jaw. And by doing this, what this does on a brain-based level is it stimulates the vagus nerve and it shifts the breathing. And it also undoes the freeze response. So just drop your jaw. That's it. And now just relax your tongue. And as you relax your tongue, this stimulates the satiation response, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. But what it will also do from the point of view of when you've got anxious clients is it slows down self-talk. Because I don't know if you noticed this before, but when people are doing self-talk, there's also micro-muscle movements in their mouth and their tongue. So if they relax your tongue, it slows down self-talk. And then what we're going to start doing is breathing on a weight of 1 to 2. So what this means is if you breathe in on a count of 3, you exhale on a count of 6. Or if you breathe in on a count of 2, you exhale on a count of 4. So basically you're doubling the out breath. And just allow yourself to do that with your jaw dropped and a relaxed tongue. And then in your mind's eye, I want you to imagine as if you could go into peripheral awareness, peripheral vision. So imagine as if you could expand your awareness out. So you could see not just what was in front of you, but all the way out to the sides, to like 180 degrees or even more. Just imagine what it would be like if you were to relax those eyes and go into peripheral vision, whilst continuing to relax your jaw and relax your tongue and breathe on a rate of 1 to 2. And as you continue to do this, I want you to imagine as almost as if you were floating in space and beginning to move and going to the left and to the right, almost as if you were just able to fly in space and move forward. So just imagine what it'd be like to move forward, become self-moving. And what this does is it shifts the impulse from the central to the basal nucleus of the amygdala. And what it does is it reverses the freezing response. Because one of the things I've discovered, having worked with thousands of people with anxiety, is if you elicit the submodalities in the context where they've got anxiety, it's nearly always a frozen still shot. It's not a movie. And the moment you turn it into a movie and they start moving and they're able to move, it frees up this freezing response. So just imagine yourself being able to float through space, banking up to the left and maybe to the right and just flowing, almost as if you could fly. Okay, and now holding on to this feeling, just open your eyes and just come back in the room. How was that? Do you notice yourself starting to relax? All these things are brain-based methods. Dropping the jaw stimulates the vagus nerve. Relaxing the tongue stimulates the parasympathetic arousal. Breathing on a rate of 1 to 2 stimulates the brainstem. And it pushes CO2 out of the system and increases the oxygen for higher cortical processing. Going into peripheral vision stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system again. And having yourself moving, again, unfreezes the response. And most anxiety, if you elicit submodalities from people who are anxious, what often happens is that they're frozen and everything else is moving. Some of you may have had dreams like that, like nightmares, where you can't run. Ever had one of those dreams? Fucking terrifying. Yeah, you can't move. Everything's coming towards you. I can't move. It's because that's what's happening. So if you have people you've got people in anxiety situations, have them imagine moving. Just that doing, taking that context, the internal representation, and start putting movement into it, that will start making them feel better. Because it will bring down the amygdala. Yeah. So that's one thing we can do. Now, the other thing we want to do is we really want to start identifying the context where this happens. We want to really identify the context, because when people come in, typically it's the same when you're working with people with anxiety. If you say to someone with anxiety, when and where do you have anxiety? They'll say, I have it all the time. All the time I have it. Are you depressed? Yeah, I'm not depressed all the time. But you know what? They're not. There are times during the day they don't even think about it. So we want to find out what are the contexts. So one of the ways we're going to find that out is through them becoming self-aware and writing these down. And we want to identify the context, because what we're going to find is, just like when we're working with any other issue, there is a trigger which often triggers the response. So we want to find that when it is. So when and where does this happen? Because typically, just in the same way as we're working with anything else, there's an X that causes Y. And we want to identify when and where does this happen. So run me through this. Give me an example where this has happened. Oh, well, the other day when I was arguing with my brother and like he was doing this and he was doing that, and I just, okay, great. We got a context. Or when I'm sitting in front of my computer and I'm really stressed and things aren't going well, and next thing I know, I'm biting my nails. So we want to find the context. Because what's going to happen is that context, that X, is going to trigger not just the behavior, but it's also going to trigger an emotion, just like it does in any other situation. There's a cause and effect going on there. So what we want to do is change that so that it doesn't trigger that, it triggers not Y, anything other than Y. And so this is where we come into some of the techniques that we probably already know. And in my opinion, the best all-round technique that you can learn for changing emotional responses to certain contexts is a collapse anchors. And is anyone doesn't know what a collapse anchors is? Okay, Tracy, great.
Oh, collapse it. No, I got it.
Well, let me just, basically stimulus response conditioning. Yep. Give an example. I'm sure you haven't, but have you ever been in a car driving along, minding your own business, and then suddenly a blue flashing light appears in your rearview mirror? And suddenly you go, what have I done wrong? And you feel bad. Yeah. Ever had that experience? Yeah. That's an example of stimulus response conditioning. That's what's called an anchor. There's been an X, the blue flashing light, has triggered Y, the response in you. Yeah. And anchors are everywhere. You know, songs are anchors. People's expressions are anchors. Jokes are anchors. Commercials are anchors. And what they do is when that fires off, it triggers an emotional response in us. And so a collapse anchor is, first of all, identifying what is this, finding the trigger, what's the trigger, what's that response, and we anchor that negative response, because we can't change the trigger. We can't change the thing in the external environment. But what we can change is the response. And then what we want to do is to have them think about what resource state would they have to be in, that if they were in that state, it would make it impossible for them to do that behavior. Like if they were in a powerful, really, really resourceful state, would that make it impossible for them to do the behavior? And then we're going to do is to have them fully associate to a time when that happened and build that state up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pair bond it. And we can do that by saying, you know, have the person think about being really, really confident. And as you imagine being really, really confident, I'm going to touch you on the back of the hand here, or touch you on the shoulder here. And as I do, I want you to double this feeling. That's it, double it again. And what we're going to do is pair it in the same way that the blue flashing light triggered the negative response. Now, when we touch them on the back of the hand, it triggers the positive response. Does that make sense? Yep. So that's how we're going to do it. So basically, if we look at this outline, and for those of you who already know this, repetition is the mother of skill. So page 11, this is a basic collapse anchors. And I'll often give this handout to the client so they can do that as well. And again, you are welcome to copy this and give it to your client. So we get them to think about a situation or a context. Have you given this outline? Yeah, it's in the book. Page 11. You not got the manual? I did send it through to you this morning. So if you checked your emails.
Okay.
Have you checked your email? Check your spam box. If you haven't got it, I will send it through when we finish. Yeah. Have you got it, Tracy? Did you find it? Okay, I'll send it through again. I can't imagine why, because does everyone else got this through? Okay. I was waiting for everyone to go, I haven't got one either. So. Okay, I will definitely send it through to you when we finish this afternoon. So basically what we do is have them think about a situation, a context, or thing that brings on this negative state. So it could be, you know, when I'm fighting with my brother. Okay. As they feel the negative state beginning to arise, they can squeeze their left hand into a fist. Then what we do is we identify what resource that they would need to make it impossible for them to feel bad in that situation. And this might be feeling confident, it might be a feeling of being loved, it might be excited, it might be motivated, whatever. And then we have them imagine a time when they felt this resource and have them in their imagination go back to that time and see what they saw, hear what they heard, feel what they felt, hear what they heard, and make this image bigger and brighter, really intensify this good feeling and spin the feelings faster. And as they do, squeeze the right hand into a fist. And then they relax the fist. So now what happens is you've got two stimulus response conditioned in behaviors, just like the blue flashing light in the rear view mirror. You squeeze the left fist, they feel bad. Squeeze the right fist, they feel good. So it's pair bonding. So now what we do is we have them think about the problem context, i.e. X. So we've now got Y on, say, one shoulder or in one hand, and not Y in the other hand, right? So we've got two emotions, two feelings. We then have them think about the context, which typically would in the past would have triggered that, and have them squeeze both hands together. And what's going to happen is it's going to fire off both neurological states at the same time. And what will happen is if they then hold the positive one, what will happen is the negative one will be deleted. And we might need to condition that in a couple of times. But this is one of the most powerful ways of changing any emotional response to any context. And this is really the heart of therapy, because 99% of anything that ever comes in your room will be some variation of when X client does Y, when you're looking at emotional things. So this is a really useful thing. So that's one of the handouts I'll give to them, and I'll run them through this in the session. So if they're a problem with their boss, their brother, their mother, their whatever, I will do it in the session with them. And over the page, sorry, Tracy, over the page, there's an outline of how you do that in hypnosis. So I'm not going to read it out to you. So now just to backtrack, we've got some leverage on them. We've identified the behaviors that lead up to it. And we're now creating awareness of the condition. And we've now reduced the stress levels. Now, if we did just that, we ended it there, we'd have a good degree of success. But now we're going to get to the real meat of the habit reversal therapy. And this is what's called competing behaviors. And what we're going to install is a new behavior in place of the old one. And this is why I said when I went back to the beginning about Hebb's law, that these neurons have wired together. That train track is still there at this point. We need to install another train track so that they start going off in a different direction. And what will happen is over a period of time, those old neurological connections will literally get absorbed and they will break apart and the new connections will be made. So a competing behavior in habit reversal therapy, installing competing behaviors involves identifying alternative actions that are incompatible with the unwanted habit. So the competing behavior must be incompatible with the habit. So what would that mean? Well, let's say, for example, if you bite your nails, what could you do that would be completely incompatible with biting your nails? Like, could you bite your nails if your hand was over here? Stretched out, like reaching out like that. Could you bite your nails at that point? No. Could you bite your nails? Like if you bite your nails when you're driving the car? Could you bite your nails if both of your hands are on the steering wheel, gripping the wheel tight? So it's got to be incompatible. So it also must be capable of being maintained for several minutes. And we'll talk about that in a moment as to why this several minutes is key. It must also not interfere with normal activities. So oftentimes when people come up with the ideas for new behaviors, well, they say, I'll just go and do something or other. And yet you can't do that 20, 30 times a day. You know, I don't know how many of you have ever worked with smokers and you try and come up with alternatives to cigarettes for helping them relax. And they go, well, I like going away on holiday. Yeah, you can't do that 20 times a day. It's very relaxing. Can't do it 20 times a day. So it's got to be something that's not going to interfere with normal activities. And it should also increase awareness of the absence of the habit when you're performing this new behavior. And ideally, what we want to do is to install it with the preceding habit. So we don't want to wait for them to be pulling their hair out. We want to be like, if their hand's suddenly going up to their face and they're twirling their hair, that's when we want to intervene. Yeah, does that make sense? Ideally, we want to get it before they actually do it. And one of the ways we can do this, again, is to have them practice in a mirror. So, for example, nail biting. A competing behavior could be clenching or grasping on something. So it could be if they're doing it on driving steering wheel, if they're biting the nails when watching the TV, get them to grip onto the arms of the chair. Armrests. If they're doing it whilst they're on the phone, get them to grip the phone. It could be to carry a stress ball or a fidget spinner. Squeeze or play with it until the urge to bite the nails subsides. Hair pulling. It could be keeping your hands busy with sort of soft fabric or worry beads. It could be engaging in other activities that require both hands, such as maybe drawing, knitting. But it could just literally be stretching their hands out like that. Just stretching their hands. You can't pull your hair when your hands are out like this. Stretching, like unless you've got really long hair. So stretching your arms out. Skin picking. It could be applying lotion or moisturizer to the area that they usually pick at, using a stress relief toy. Keep the hands occupied during those moments of tension. Thumb sucking. Could be holding a worry stone, soft plush toy when they feel the urge to suck their thumb. Any time of mindful technique will address the underlying emotions or symptoms. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because they're going to get the urge for the behavior. And that urge is going to be really strong. Yeah. Anyone ever had a habit like nail biting or something like that? The urge is really strong, right? And that urge will come up, just like the urge for people with cigarettes or whatever. The urge will come up. How long do you think an urge or a craving can go up for? In other words, what's the life of a state? How long do you think that might be?
I would guess about 2 minutes.
Not bad. Anyone else? And this research comes from research that was done on addictions, right? So we're talking heavy duty addictions. A person's got real craving. Craving. How long do you reckon that craving lasts? Any advance on 2 minutes? Well, you are pretty close, Ricky. It's about 90 seconds. And in some cases, a lot less. And this comes from the researcher Paul Ekman. And he wrote an article, An Argument for Basic Emotions and Cognition and Emotion, in 1992. And he said that it's a lot of the time, it's not even 90 seconds. So the longest an emotion, an urge, can coast biochemically is seconds. Now, I know what you're going to say, but I've felt like crap for longer than 90 seconds. Sometimes I feel like crap all day long. Yeah. Sometimes I have a craving for chocolate every evening, and it's like, ah, yeah. How's that happening? Well, what's happening is, let's say you go from no, let's see if it, yeah, you want from no urge up to the top of the urge, back down, and that's 90 seconds, right? So what's happening when people are having urges for longer than that? They're throwing wood on the fire. And so they start, this comes up, and then they throw another bit of 90 seconds on the top of it. Oh my God, I really could do with some chocolate. Oh my God, I got this craving. I've got to do that. Oh no, here it goes again. And they're putting wood on the fire. And that's why it lasts longer, because they're putting wood on the fire. But a craving itself, when left on its own and then distracted, maximum 90 seconds. So what we want to do is, when we're working with someone and they have the urge to pull their hair, they have the urge to bite their nails, they have the urge to do the tic, we want to get this competing behavior and have them hold that behavior, the competing behavior, for 90 seconds, at least two, to be on the safe side, when you first start practicing this, for 2-3 minutes. And here's the good thing, and we'll get to this when we're talking about tics in a moment. If you then distract them and talk to them whilst they're doing that, or you do some other form of help like bilateral therapy at that same time, we can bring it down even faster. So this is where we can add to the original habit reversal therapy stuff, because we can add things to this. So we want to get them to practice consistently. This is really vital. They have to understand that they need to practice this over and over again. They need to be patient. Habits can often take time and effort to break. So we want them to get patient with themselves and don't get discouraged if the progress is gradual. Get them to stay persistent. So this is so important. Now, often these things will occur in your office or whilst you're doing your Zoom session, particularly if you're working with tics, right? The urge will come up. So we do it then. We get them to compete, do that behavior then. And often when I've been working with young sort of teenagers who've got tics, it will be happening 20 times during the session. So it's great because we got an opportunity to practice it there and then. So if we go on the page and to page 16, we've been working with tics or Tourettes. The competing behavior is an isometric contraction. What the heck is an isometric contraction? Well, it's a contraction of the muscles. Remember years ago when they used to do adverts in the TV, on the paper, you could do isometrics to build muscles. You could go and kick sand in people's faces. Well, contracting those muscles can make those muscles stronger. Because what happens, let's say a person has a tic which their neck violently goes over to the left side, right? If they do that for a number of months, number of years, what's going to happen is those muscles on that side of the neck are going to build up really strong, and they easily overpower those ones. So these ones are going to be strong, those ones are going to be weak. Because what's happening there is that they're contracting over and over again. So what we need to do is have a competing behavior that is opposite with isometric contraction. So as we build with this, the opposing muscles that have been weak, they will start to get stronger. And as they get stronger, they'll start to inhibit the tic easier so that it takes less conscious effort to control it. So for example, if someone's got their head jerks backwards, the muscles at the back of the neck are going to get really strong. The ones at the front are going to be weak. So what we need to do is to go, okay, so let's say that you've got a person working with you in your office and then head's going back. We decide that that's the competing behavior that we're going to use. We have them pay attention and notice the steps just prior to that happening. We get the competing behavior, and then we're going to have them hold that competing behavior and notice what happens. So when they start to get the urge, say to them, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the biggest urge in the world, where are you right now? I'm at a 10. Great. Hold the competing behavior. And then we're going to talk to them about something they enjoy doing. And now with these kids, this is great because you can talk to them about football or their class or their hobbies, things like that. Have them talk about something that is an interest while they hold the competing behavior. Now, obviously, if someone's got a competing, like if someone's got a violent head movement, having them just hold their head like this is probably not going to be very good for them. They can't walk around the rest of the day like this or having conversations with people while holding their head. So let's say the head movement is like this. What we can do is say, okay, I want you to, here's what we need to do. I want you to pull your head down a little bit, tuck your chin in, and pull your neck back a little bit and engage these muscles here, right? So now they've got a scale of 10 on the urge to do it. We now get them to hold that position, and we're now going to talk to them. So tell me, Johnny, what do you like about playing football? Oh, it's great. My friends and do this and I do that and I do this and I do that and I do that and that. Now, if we add now bilateral stimulation in at this point and getting them tapping on their legs at the same time, we are starting to stimulate both hemispheres of the brain. And what's going to happen is going to bring that craving down, that urge down much, much sooner. So we keep checking in on them. So like we have them talk about their hobby for a couple of minutes and they go, great, okay, so what's the urge now? And they go, what? Oh, it's only about 5. Oh, it's only about 5. Okay, keep that position. Tell me more about your hobby. Keep doing that. Keep tapping on your legs. Do that for another couple of minutes. Ask them again, where is it now? It's a 3. Okay, just hold that position. Bring that, talk about the thing. Where is it now? It's gone. Great. And you just start talking to them about other things. And what's going to happen is, it's the first time you do that, it might take 5 minutes to bring that craving right down because they'll be throwing logs at the fire at the moment. But now you've given them experience that lets them know that, hang on a minute, I can bring this down. And so later on in the session, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, they go, I've got the urge again, or they might actually go into it and go, use the competing behavior. And then you start talking to them again and tapping on their legs. And what you'll find is the second time, it might only take 3 minutes to bring it down to 0. And then the third time, 2.5 minutes. And just keep doing it. And if they practice that for your hour-and-a-half session or whatever it is you do, you're going to bring it down and down and down, but you're going to really prove to them that they can control it. So, because what will happen is habituation will kick in. It can't not do that. That's what the brain does. It habituates. So again, first time might take 5 minutes to bring it right down to 0, then 4 minutes, then 2 minutes, 1 minute, whatever. If you're working with kids, get the parents in. And if the parents say, hey, you're ticking. No. Say, remember your competing behavior. Just do your competing behavior. Because parents can be hypercritical. Oh, you're doing that again. Hasn't worked. That's not going to be helpful. So have them hold the exercise until that urge passes. Now, with Tourette's, you're going to have coprolalia. Guess what that is? Fucking swearing. Right? These are people who involuntarily shout out swear words. Curious why they swear words, but never mind. When they feel the urge to swear coming on, what we could do is have them begin to say a rhyme or a limerick in their head. Now, here's the other thing, and a lot of tics can be vocal tics. They're like making grunting noises, those sorts of things. Now, think about if someone is making a noise that's coming out of their mouth, what does that imply, which way the air is going? It's coming in through the nose and out through the mouth. Yep. So what we can do is, like any type of vocal tics, treat the same way with a relaxed breathing procedure, and the competing behavior is always going to be the opposite. So snorting, blowing out. So some of them will be blowing out through their nose and breathing in through their mouth. In which case, you run it the other way. So if they're blowing out through their nose and breathing in, have them breathe in through their nose and breathe out through their mouth. If they're making it out through their mouth, the air's coming out, so have them breathe in through their mouth and out through their nose. You run the opposite. So swearing is a vocal tic. That's going out through the mouth. So the counter is in through the mouth, out the nose. And they keep doing that breathing until the urge passes. We're not telling them that they should speak that way. I can't speak, but breathing in. No, we're telling them to do that breathing pattern until the urge comes down. Yeah, does that make sense? So the key is identifying the urge and doing the competing behavior and holding that competing behavior until the urge comes down. So again, if you got something like jerking the head to the right, now you might think, well, I'm going to put my hand on there to stop it going there. That's the wrong one. Those muscles are already too strong. If you push against them, you're going to get even stronger muscles. So if the head is going off to the left, sorry, to the right, have them push the other way. Competing behavior. Yeah, Ricky.
How long does someone typically have prior to the urge, like when they feel it coming? You know what I mean?
It depends on behavior we're talking about. If it's nail biting or...
I may actually mainly more so towards the Tourette's and tics.
Very little time.
Yeah.
Very little. It comes, they can, sometimes they can feel it come up, and I say they might do the protective, like conceal behaviors or something like that. They can feel a moment, but at that point you want them to move the head or whatever it is. Like if their arm is going, they want to do the opposite. So for example, if their head is shaking, do the opposite. Contract the neck muscles, slowing down that feeling. Contract those neck muscles and pull the head in, and with the chest forward, hold that position, breathing on a rate of 1 to 2. But the key is, look, they're going to make mistakes. They are going to do the tic still. And the moment they do it, remember your competing behavior. Go and do that again. Do the competing behavior. They've got to do a rewiring job. So breathing on a rate of 1 to 2 in that situation. Now, this idea of doing bilateral stimulation when working with it is really, really powerful. I know some of you, I know Becky has, she's bought my accelerated change training technique course now. And there's one particular technique on there where I work with someone who's got a trauma. And this trauma was so severe, she could barely think about it. And it was a training that we did last year. And I asked the group, has anyone here got a traumatic memory that's so bad you can't even think about it, like you don't even go there? And this woman put her hand up and said, yeah, I've got a really bad one. And you know, you get to the point where you're doing this for a while and you think, you know what, I've heard everything. And typically in a training environment, because so many people are hypnotherapists, most people have solved a lot of their own problems by the time you do this. So when, as a trainer, if you're calling for volunteers, you don't tend to get really big problems because most people have dealt with their own stuff by the time they get in that situation. So I said, okay, she put her hand up and I said, okay, what's the thought? And she said, oh my God. She said, some time ago, I saw a young woman push her baby out in front of oncoming traffic in a buggy. And I went, my response was, oh shit. Like, oh my God. So a real bad one. And she couldn't even think about it. Like if she thought about it, she was freaking out, right? So I bring her up the front of the room, sucking up, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? Why did I pick that person? So I do this technique. And what it was, it works on memory reconsolidation and prediction error. So she's now sits on the front and we're both sitting in chairs facing the audience. And I said, so you got this problem that you don't want to think about? And she went, yes. Right. Now at that point, she's activated. I don't need for her to actually tell me any more about it. I don't need to associate her into the horror of that experience. The moment she just thought about the thing that she doesn't want to think about, she is thinking about it. And that's activated those neural connections. So then I say, okay, follow me. We're both sitting on the chairs in front of the audience, and I'm slapping on my thighs like this. And I say, do this. So she's doing that as well. And I say, what do you like doing? And I think it was gardening. And she starts talking about gardening, all the things she likes about gardening. And at this point, she's totally changed her state. She's happy. She's talking about all the lovely things she likes about gardening. And we do this for about 2 or 3 minutes. And I said, okay, now stop. What happens now when you think about that memory? And you see the look on her face. She can't find it. She's like, and I zoom in on try to edit as best as I can, and I zoom in on her face because she's like, huh? She's got that real what the fuck look on her face because now she cannot access the thought. This bilateral stimulation exercise works so well. So when we combine that with habit reversal therapy, it is really powerful at bringing down that craving. Yeah. So just merely having them tap on their legs and tell you about something that is fun for them, that occupies their attention, activates different parts of the brain. It brings into play memory reconsolidation and prediction error, and that craving will come down so much quicker. And this is, again, they do need to practice it. This is not like do it once, it's gone. No, it did with the memory, but when we're talking about tics, they have to practice it. So do you have any questions on that? Because I know that's like, you think, that can't be that easy. Well, yeah. Yeah, Tom. Do you want to put your mic on?
There we go. Yeah, I got a question. So okay, I'm thinking about a little girl. She's about 11 or 12 now, and she's had a tic. She kind of does like this with her hands. Now, she kind of like do this sort of thing. Now, I'm assuming that now I'm a nail biter, so I'm assuming that she gets some kind of gratification from doing that, self-soothing. But my point is, it seems that it's often an unconscious thing that she's doing. She's not aware of it. And I know, being a nail biter for all my life, often I catch myself biting my nails, and usually there's a trigger of I'm watching a movie and there's some anxious moments, or thinking about something that's making me feel a little anxious, and that's my natural self-soothing mechanism. So I'm assuming that what she's doing is a similar thing. But my question is, it's an unconscious, and a lot of times in my case, it's an unconscious thing that I'm doing. I catch myself doing it, and you know, often I'll have a nail that's almost bitten off, and I'll
Yeah.
catch myself doing it, and I like, I don't feel satiated unless I just finish what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
in her case, because I'm guessing it is unconscious. She's not aware of why she's doing it, and perhaps if you slowed her down, questioned her, she'd be able to determine what the trigger is. But you know, I think it's difficult even for an adult to recognize the thought that's triggering that action. So my
Yeah.
question is, when her parents who notice that she's doing it correct her on it and bring it to her attention, why is that a bad thing?
Because it will add to shame.
Okay, okay, yeah, okay,
She'll
I
feel
can see that.
bad. She feels bad already. And again, it depends on how they do it. If they go, "You're doing that thing again, stop it."
Right, right.
Shame.
Yeah, I don't think they usually, you know what? Sometimes they might. I'm
Yeah.
not with them all the time.
Yeah,
But
and this is the difficult thing. But the key is, this is why the awareness training is so important up front. You got to bring this into awareness. This is the real key. They got to start becoming aware of what these things that they're doing unconsciously.
hmm,
Yep. And you know, in your situation, if you put one of these little security cams that videoed you while you're watching TV, you're going to start becoming consciously aware of it. And that's the point where you intervene. So with something like that, yeah, you're absolutely right. There could be self-soothing going on. However, what we're going to do is we're going to, self-soothing implies that she's not feeling comfortable right now. So if we install other ways of relaxing through self-hypnosis, TFT, EFT, all these sort of brain-based leverage points, those sorts of things can calm down that feeling. And then if she's doing this with her fingers, what could be a competing behavior?
yeah, spreading her fingers, sure. Making a fist, doing.
Making a fist. Making a fist would be really obvious, because then it would be less obvious to other people, because she's making a fist, and like, that doesn't look like anything. People make fists all the time. It wouldn't draw attention to herself. Now, if our parents then say, remember your self-soothing, you remember your competing behavior, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But if they go, "You're doing it again," that's the problem. So just say, you know, gentle reminder, remember your competing behavior. So it's really, really important with kids is that you don't make them fit. And one of the things when I'm working with kids is, because I know they're going to have shame, I will say to them, you know what, right up front, I'll say, you know what, you got a really good skill there. And they go, what? And I go, well, I don't know if it's occurred to you, but that behavior you're doing is self-hypnosis. It's like when you find yourself going off and you're twiddling in this and like you're going somewhere else. That's hypnosis. That's a really good skill. Now I've suddenly reframed the problem. That's a real good skill. In fact, we're going to use that same skill to help you change it and do something a little bit better. Would that be okay? Suddenly we got rid of the shame. It's a skill. It's self-hypnosis. It's a self-soothing behavior. It's really good. What if we could come up with some other ways of doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, in the case of this little girl, she's been diagnosed from the school psychologist and whatnot, as being on the she's neurodivergent, and there's some other little things that she does that
If you
I
look
mean,
at someone the wrong way these days, you can get diagnosed as being neurodivergent.
yeah, I mean, what is neurotypical? You know,
Yeah, good
that's
luck
an
with that
argument.
one.
Yeah, exactly. You can make an argument with that. But you know, there is some other behaviors that lend you to think she might have a little bit of Asperger's. I mean, she's not real affectionate. There's just, you know, she gets a little spacey, and you know, there's some other small behaviors that that lead you to think that there's that on the scale she might be a little more neurodivergent uh
Yeah.
than most.
And that may be the case. And that may be the case. However, these techniques will still work if you approach it with rapport. Now, with someone like that, I'm not going to do the thing right at the front of doing the leverage. How bad are you going to feel in 5 years from now if you carry on doing this? How's that going to wreck your life? I'm not going to do that with an 11-year-old girl.
Sure.
Yeah. But I'm going to build rapport and say, look, I've got a crazy idea that I think I've got some ideas that will help you with this. And in fact, you've got a really good skill there. And if we can divert that to something in another way, wow, this is going to really change your life. Would you like to do that?
Yeah,
So,
I like that reframing. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it gets rid of the shame about it. It's a skill. They've learned a really powerful skill. People aren't broken.
No.
Okay. So now this is one of the things, we're going over the page to page 17. This is one of the traditional NLP techniques that is often used for unconscious behaviors, which is the 6-step reframe. Now, there's only really 2 techniques in NLP. I know people think there's thousands of them, but there really isn't. There's 2. There's anchoring and there's reframing. Everything else is a derivative of those 2 things. And so with a 6-step reframe, we can work with these unconscious behaviors. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a channel of communication. We're going to get some form of signaling system. And it could be straightforward in hypnosis, finger signals. We could just use head nods or something like that. Often I've used the symptom itself. In fact, when I worked with the guy with the myoclonus, this is what I did. I used the signal itself. And I had him, his body went, a big reaction as a yes signal. Okay. As I said to him, okay, I want you to go inside and I want you to ask your unconscious mind to give you a signal. If this part is willing to work with me, that it will give you a signal. And you'd bring, and go, okay, that'll do. So typically, obviously, we identify the pattern that's going to be changed. And we then ask the person, close their eyes, go inside, and like to talk to the part of you that's creating this behavior. Thank the part for doing a good job. If you're working with that little girl, this has been doing a really good job for you. It's been self-soothing you. And let them know that you understand that it's got a positive intention. I know you're trying to do something that's really trying to help, whatever her name is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask the unconscious mind to give yes signals by raising one finger or whatever. And ask the unconscious mind, are you willing to let the person know what it is of value that occurs with this behavior? And again, if you get a yes, then great. Okay, so go ahead and let the person know. And what you'll find is that behind the presupposition in NLP is that behind every behavior, there is a positive intention. Even if the behavior appears to be destructive, at some level, there is a positive intention. So we find out what the positive intention is. And let's say it's to help me relax. It's to help me deal with stress. It's to whatever. Great, perfect. It's a really good idea to have a part of your mind. Your mind looks after you, that wants you to help you to relax. That's a good thing, yeah? Great. Then you ask the part if it would be willing to go to the creative part of the mind and come up with 3 new healthy ways of responding that don't include that behavior. What else could you do in that situation? Get 3 new behaviors. When you get a yes, thank the part again and tell it to evaluate each one in terms of whether or not it believes that the new behavior is as immediate or as effective, as available as the one it had been using. And once it's got those 3, ask the part if it'd be willing to try out the new way of behaving instead of the old way for a period of time to evaluate its effectiveness. Now, I'll give you an example of a time when I used this, not in a clinical setting. Many years ago, about 25 years ago, I got into a new relationship, and as these things happen, I ended up spending the night with this young lady, and we had a long relationship after that. And the first night that I spent there, other than the obvious, get that out of the way. When she fell asleep, suddenly I was awakened to the sound of what I can only describe as a cement mixer in the bedroom. There was this terrible grinding noise, like, what the hell is that? Wow. And I woke up and I looked at her and she's grinding her teeth, really badly grinding her teeth. I thought, oh, wow, that's really loud. So in the morning, I said, do you know you grind your teeth at night? She went, oh, God, yeah. She said, my back teeth are really worn down. I've been to the dentist. I've been fitted with these brace things at night, you know, these rubber mouth guards and whatever. Nothing's worked. I went, all right, okay. Would you like me to help you with that? And she went, well, yeah, but what can you do? I went, well, let's see. I said, I don't want to talk to you. And I looked straight through. So this is all done eyes open. And I went, and I looked straight through. So I did what Richard Bandler used to call mixed state communication. And I looked straight through. So I defocused my eyes, focused about a foot behind her. Now that puts someone in a light of like, what's going on, state? And I said, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the part of you that's causing you to grind your teeth. If that part of you is willing to communicate with me, I'd like that part to give me a yes signal to let me know. And her jaw went. And she went, what the hell was that? I said, I'd like to thank that part for communicating me. Was that a yes signal? Off it went again. So thank you. I said, great. I said, I'd like to ask that part if it'd be willing to let you know in consciousness what its intention is for grinding your teeth. She said, stop doing that. I said, okay, what is it? And she said, well, it's to help me deal with stress. Oh, okay, great. So I said, I'd like to ask the part of you if you'd be willing to go to the part of your mind that creates new things and new behaviors. And would it like to come up with 3 new healthy ways of relieving stress that don't include grinding your teeth? I said, great, okay. Go through and let me know when you've got those 3 new behaviors. A few minutes. Great. I'd like to ask that part, would it be willing to try out one of these new behaviors instead of the old one for 3 weeks to evaluate its effectiveness? And if it would, give me a yes signal. Great. Is it okay with every part of your mind and body now to use this new way of behaving instead of the old one? Yes. Right. Fast forward 2 or 3 weeks. She said, I know what the new behavior is. And I went, what's that? She said, I'm clicking my nails. Completely stopped the teeth grinding. Now she's got another way of just relieving the stress, right? So this is a great new way of coming up with new behaviors. I've used this a lot with smokers. You know, you can use it with so many different things. It's a really, really useful thing. So you don't necessarily have to use this because a lot of times the habit reversal therapy on its own will take care of this. But this is something else you can use as a fallback. Yeah. So as I mentioned, really, one of the things we want to be so clear, the biggest flaw with this method is the person has got to be motivated and determined to put the work in. It's not about you fixing them. It's about you instruct them how to fix themselves. And if they do the work and they do the competing behavior over and over again, they will rewire that train track. So we need for them to become really determined to do this. So we've done the leverage at the front end. And then if we're going to do a hypnosis session, which we're going to get to in a moment, what we need to do is to install a feeling of determination. And so what we can do is to have them think about something they already feel determined about. Now, for me, ever since I was like 13, 14 years old, I've always worked out with weights. So I train regularly. I've changed my workout schedule slightly. So I'm not training as many days as I'm just training in a different way. but I train really intensely. And so if I go into my gym and let's say I'm going to do a set of bench press or squats or something like that, I'm typically training with a really, really heavy weight. And I can't go in there and do that if I'm in a crap state. Because you put 400 pounds on your back and try and squat and you're not having a good day, you're going to go through the floor. So you've got to be in the real peak state. So for me, when I go into my gym, I am really determined. A bomb could go off, I wouldn't hear it. So that for me is a really determined state. So we want to find something like that. What's something that you're like really determined to do? And what we want to do is then is, if you know NLP, you want to find out the submodalities. So, okay, when you think about that, is that a really big picture? Is it in front of you? Make it bigger, make it brighter. And have them notice the feeling of determination in their body. When you think of that, where do you feel this feeling of determination? Oh, I feel it in my chest. Great. Which way is the feeling spinning? Now, does everyone know about spinning feelings? Anyone who not know about spinning feelings? Be easier. Cool. So just in a nutshell, to recap, if you have a positive feeling, or if you have any feeling, and you want to increase the intensity of the feeling, you spin it faster in the same direction. If you have a negative feeling and you want to get rid of it, you spin it in the opposite direction. But if you want to build up a state, have them feel the feeling, notice where it is in their body, notice which way it's spinning. So for example, if someone says it's spinning clockwise, you go, great. Okay, as you think about feeling determined, I want you to notice this feeling in your body spinning clockwise. I want you to spin it faster. That's it, spin it faster and faster. And as you do that, notice how this feeling of determination gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So now we've got this state. So now we're going to break the state and have them think about what they want to be determined about. So in this case, they want to be determined about breaking this habit. And we want to then elicit the submodalities of that. And so then what we're going to do, let's draw this out. So then what we're going to do is, so we have them think about the thing they want to, the habit they want to change, and how they represent it, how they think about it. And so this is going to be the thing they want to be determined about in their mind's eye, the internal representation of it. And what we're going to do, so at the moment, we're going to have two states. We're going to have what they currently do, the feeling of determination, which is this one. And in one corner, we're going to have what they want to be determined about. And so let's say, for example, this is nail biting. So this is the image of how they want to be free of nail biting. And this is their determination to go and work out with weights. When they look at that, they feel really determined. We're going to put the little picture down here of breaking free of nail biting down here. And then what we're going to do is going to have this image explode big and bright over the top of the other one, only as quickly as that they can maintain this feeling of determination. So now they're looking at their outcome of being free of this habit, and now they're feeling the determination, and we're going to have them spin the feeling faster and faster. So now they've got the same feeling of determination when they think about reaching their outcome of breaking the habit. Does that make sense? Yeah. Everyone got that? So we're going to take the resources that you already have of being determined in one area and take them over into this area, basically. And we're going to spin that feeling of determination. Now, sometimes, particularly when you're working with, in my experience, it's typically with young women and young girls, they don't have very good self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves. They feel shameful for what the behavior they've been doing. And so they don't feel good about themselves. And so this technique gives them a feeling of self-love. So what I want you to do is just have a little practice of this. And even though if you love yourself right now, you can't feel you can't have too much of this. So what I want you to do is just, with your eyes closed for a moment, I want you to just think about someone who loves you. Or think of someone who you've done something for and as a result really appreciates you. And sometimes when I'm doing this with a group, they say, well, nobody. What about a dog? Your dog loves you, your cat loves you. Think about someone who loves you, someone who really appreciates you. And then with your eyes closed, imagine that you are writing your autobiography. And as you do so, glance up to see on the other side of a glass door, the person who loves you or appreciates you. And next, float your awareness outside of the room and stand next to this person. And now see yourself through the glass door, making your observations. And then what I want you to do is I want you to enter the body of the person who loves you. And I want you to see yourself through this person's eyes of love and appreciation. And listen to this person's thoughts of love about you. And have this person's feelings. Notice whatever they notice when they're looking at you. And feel these feelings of love for you that they have. Really have these feelings. And if these feelings were a color, I wonder what color they would be. And whatever color they were, just imagine there's a big ball of this color above the top of your head, whatever this color is. And imagine that as you breathe in, you're breathing in this color of love into your body. Like water fills up a jug, or hot air or helium fills up a balloon. Imagine this color filling up your body, bathing each and every cell in your body with this feeling of love. And I want you to lock these feelings in so completely, so forcefully, so permanently, that there's no force in the universe, not even you, that could turn it off or take it away. And when you know that you've done this, when you know that you've locked this feeling in so completely, so forcefully, that there's no force in the universe that could turn it off or take it away, I want you to try it. Try and turn it off. Notice what happens when you try. Can't do it, can you? That's right. And then holding on to this feeling, I want you to float back into your body. And I want you to write the qualities and aspects of yourself that you saw and heard when you looked through the eyes of love and appreciation. And just take a few moments now to do this. Write down all the qualities and the aspects of yourself that you saw and heard when you looked through the eyes of love and appreciation. That's it. And as you continue to do that, I want you to perhaps imagine or think about possible times and places in the future, both now or in the future, when you'll want to re-experience this sense of deep appreciation. Perhaps just think about times and places, both now and in the future, where you want to experience this sense of deep self-appreciation. And perhaps even imagine going into situations where in the past you would have most likely responded with a pattern of behavior that you didn't like, but now imagine yourself going into this situation feeling this way. This feeling of deep self-appreciation. And notice the changes. and understand that there's negative thoughts, beliefs, or influences will have no effect to you at this or any of the waking levels of consciousness now, because you're a powerful, positive person with more strengths and abilities than you ever begun to use until now. And with each and every day, you're going to feel better and better and better, because you learned how to love yourself and feel good about yourself and really appreciate yourself for the wonderful human being that you are and will continue to be. That's it. And if at any time you want to come back and write more in that book, feel free to do so. That's it. And then when you're ready, just open your eyes and come back in the room. How was that? Good. So this is something we can do to teach people how to feel good about themselves. You know, sometimes people will go, well, nobody loves me, but their dog loves them. You know, somebody does. So it's a really powerful method. It comes originally from the work of Leslie Cameron Bandler, who was Richard Bandler's first wife back in the early days of NLP. And it's a really, really good process. Okay. So going over the page, we've got the standard NLP technique for changing a lot of habits. And when I was first doing a lot of habit changing, when I first learned NLP, this would be my go-to thing for things like nail biting. And I still use it on occasion, and it's worth knowing if you haven't come across it before. Because what it does is it basically tells the brain, not this, this, not this, this. Does anyone not know the swish pattern? Great. That'll save a bit of time, because we've still got a few things to go. So basically, for nail biting, for example, you want to get a large dissociative picture of yourself, and you see the hand coming up, and at that point, that's one of your pictures. Then you get your idealized image of how you want to be having made this change. And the swish pattern is really a rah-rah pattern. It's like a motivational pattern. And if you're not fully conversant with it, I've got a video on my YouTube channel which really runs you through it. But it is a rah-rah pattern. It's a real motivational pattern. And basically, you're telling the brain, not this, this, not this, this, not this, this. And this used to be my go-to, as I say, for things like nail biting, because it's really, really powerful. But having learned this habit reversal therapy, I don't tend to learn it as much as I did, but it's still a very good technique. So let's outline what we're going to do if we're doing the hypnosis session. So remember I said that right at the beginning that hypnosis really is, according to Irving Kirsch, a non-deceptive mega placebo. So if we take all this powerful stuff from habit reversal therapy and now add hypnosis to it, we're going to get a very, very powerful process. So when we get to the hypnosis part, obviously you do your normal pre-talk, explain to them that they're not going to fall asleep, float around the room, become a zombie. They're going to be aware of everything. They hear the sounds in the room, the sound of outside the room, the sound of your voice, all those sorts of things. They can't be made to do what they don't want to do, all those things. I think it's really important that we educate clients with hypnosis that it's active, not passive. They're not to go off to the land of la la and somehow magically we're reprogramming their unconscious mind. They have to actively participate in this process. Yeah. So it's an active process. We're working together. So tell them what you're about to tell them. So we're going to tell them, okay, so we've got the steps of habit reversal therapy. We've got this awareness and we've got this competing behavior. And what we're going to do now is install this in your mind at the unconscious level so that it becomes automatic. Because with hypnosis, we have a very, very powerful tool to install it directly into your mind. So we're going to tell them what we're going to tell them. So it's the old salesperson technique. You're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, then you're going to tell them, and then you're going to tell them what you told them, right? So we also want to create a positive resource anchor at some point. However, we can do that before the session or during the session. Then ideally, particularly if we're doing any type of habit making, like nail biting, hair pulling, things like that, skin picking, I'm going to use an arm catalepsy induction, and that is over the page. We're going to run through that in a moment. And the reason for that is we want to give them an idea that we can create involuntary movements of their arms. So we want an arm cataleptic induction that's perfect for this sort of work. So then we're going to induce hypnosis, and then we're going to associate the client to the problem context. Okay, so where are you when this happens? So take them, well, you know, I've just had a row with my brother or something like this, or blah, 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 I'm in front of my computer. Have the client nod their head when they're ready for the next step. So we have to have them associated in that context. So they see what they see, hear what they hear, feel what they felt, as if they were there now. So we want them fully associated in that context. And then we're going to revivify the habit and really get them associated into that behavior. So ask them, well, what are you doing? And then have them describe their thoughts and feelings and actions out loud. So make it clear that they can stay in hypnosis and still talk to you. Make sure that when they're describing it, they're using present tense words, right? So I am doing this, rather than, oh, well, I was doing that and I did do that. No, they're not associated at that point. Have them use present tense words. Ask them how they're feeling. What are they feeling that might trigger the habit? What do they feel like doing? What actions lead up to the habit? And they might say, well, I'm feeling anxious, bored, tense, and I'm starting to move my hand towards my face and twirl my hair. I feel like I really have to bite my nails. I have to pull my hair. Have the client bring themselves right up to the very point in which they would normally give into the habit. Take them right up to the... Now have them imagine doing the competing behavior, and we're going to fire the resource anchor. They're like, so they feel good, right? So as they do the competing behavior, whatever that is, like that they feel good doing it. And have them hold that competing behavior until the urge subsides. Now in hypnosis, this often takes a lot less than it would do otherwise. So this could take 10, 15 seconds, particularly if you're firing the habit, because the firing the anchor, if you're firing the anchor at that point, that's going to knock the urge out in and of itself. And have them then say to themselves, I am blocking the habit by whatever the competing behavior is. And I'm in control and I'm relaxed.
What?
So we want to change the dialogue. And then we're going to repeat this at least 5 times to condition it in. And if necessary, use different contexts. For some people, their problem only occurs in one context, just repeat it. But other times, it could be with other contexts. So at least 5 times. Yep. And constantly checking in that they're doing it and the urge goes. Constantly checking in, the urge is gone. Yeah, they're doing their repeated behavior. So it's interactive. We're keeping this whole thing interactive. Once we've done that about 5 times, then we're going to use the determination technique that we just ran through to increase the determination to keep on doing this. And then we're going to install a recovery strategy. What is a recovery strategy? A recovery strategy is something that we're going to use so that in the future, if they have a negative day, or if they do bite their nails, that they pick themselves up and do the competing behavior and spin this feeling of determination over and over again. It's really important to understand that not everything works 100% of the time first time you do it. And if people go away from your office and they're okay for like a week, 2 weeks or whatever, but then they screw up and do the behavior, they might think, oh my God, I've failed, and they'll go back to it. Well, we want to get them, just like if we're working with someone who's a weight loss or drinking or whatever, if they make a mistake, they pull themselves back up and we increase the determination. And so we take them further and further out into the future, having a little slip up and then getting back up and feeling determined and get back on using the competing behavior. So we're going to future pace in the recovery strategy so that if they slip up, they know what to do. A lot of people always rehearse success. They never rehearse failure. I've worked with a lot with boxers, and I worked with one guy. He was doing really well. He'd had about his first, I don't know, half a dozen fights. He'd had 5 knockouts. He was knocking the other person out. He was really rehearsed success. Then one day he went and had a fight and he got knocked down. He didn't know how to deal with it. So we had to rehearse in, what are you going to do? You get knocked down, As Mike Tyson used to say, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. You have to rehearse failing and getting back and continuing. Does that make sense? And so this is how we're going to install this in hypnosis. So does that make sense? Now, I'm not expecting you to just do one session and be done. I mean, in the original work, they were doing a 2-hour session. Personally, I would do 3 or 4 sessions at least, because sometimes different things come up. And in my situation, as Tracy mentioned, often you're working with trauma as well. Deal with the trauma. Don't leave that there. Someone comes in and they've got hair pulling and you discover in the pre-talk that they've got a history of trauma. Work with that first. Build this on steady grounds. Like everything else, if you've got good foundations, you're going to build a good building. But if you try and build it on rocky foundations, then you could struggle. Does that make sense? So if there are other things, go ahead and deal with those first. So there's some things in the back, handouts that you can give to the client as well, because they kind of need to be educated as to what habit reversal therapy is. They also need to understand that they have a job to do. That part of the responsibility for the change is on them, and you're going to help them with it. But they have to do the work. So there's handouts there. You can feel free to copy them, adapt them, whatever you like. I don't care. Just go ahead and help people with these conditions. So it just, for some of you, that could just be thought starters, which you could take bits of that and think, no, I'm going to make it better. Just have a look at it. But it's something you can give to the clients. So any questions on that, on what we've covered? Tom?
Yeah, I got one question, Barry. Maybe you could shed some light on it for me. I've never been a big fan of the 6-step reframe. I know it's a popular NLP pattern. A lot of people use it. To me, it's a little bit contrived. There's so many steps. But the problem I have is when you ask the person to come up with 3 alternate behaviors to fulfill the positive intention that the behavior they want to change is doing. Often they look like a deer in the headlights, that you kind of like put them on the spot. And it seems like it's hard enough for them to come up with 1 competing behavior, let alone 3. And so I guess my question is, how do you grease the wheels a little bit for that? And is it wise to suggest some things, or just leave it to them to come up with something?
I've done it in all sorts of ways. I've done the whole thing just in hypnosis and trusting the mind to do it for them. And in some occasions that's worked fine. Other times, I know you're absolutely right about the 6-step reframe. In the parts therapy webinar that I did a few months ago, I went through and looked and took the framework of that and demonstrated how you can do it completely conversationally, because that was the basis of Virginia Satir's work. She would do the 6-step reframe virtually conversationally with couples, and she would take the man and woman in the couples counseling, and she'd have she'd do the parts therapy with them. So the husband, for example, might be coming up with new ways of responding. So you can do it in loads of different ways, and it's the idea that behind every behavior there is a positive intention. One of the ways that I often, if someone's struggling, I would say, and let's say they got one way, up until now, they got one way of dealing with a certain situation. So for example, taking it out of this context, let's say I was working with someone who gets depressed, and when they get depressed, they drink, right? So that's what they have been doing. So I'd say, okay, just imagine a situation, and we're having a conversation. I'll do this conversation. I say, okay, so in the past, when you got depressed, you drink, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So just imagine this situation. You and I are walking down the road, and we see someone there who's really depressed. And we say to them, we can help. We're experts. All you need to do when you're depressed is have a drink. Have we given them good advice? And of course, the person goes, no, that's ridiculous. And say, okay, well, what could we tell that other person to do in that situation if they're depressed? Now what we've done, we've dissociated it, right? It's not them, it's this other person. And so they might go, well, they might go for a walk. Okay. Have them imagine that person going for a walk. Does that work? No, it doesn't work. Oh, okay, great. What else could we do? And by dissociating them, they tend to be able to, because one of the maneuvers I often use is, I had one this week, right? I had a woman I'd worked with previously with anxiety 3 or 4 months ago, and she was doing fine. Now suddenly her daughter is being really destructive. She smashed her car up. She's getting herself in all sorts of trouble, phoning up from the hospital, really attention seeking. So she's come to see me to basically just say, is there anything wrong with me? Is it me that's the problem? And I went, okay, imagine for a moment, I said to her, imagine for a moment that you are the therapist and I'm the person who's come in with this problem. And I've just told you that I've got this daughter who's doing all these things. What do I need to do? She said, you need to kick her out. She couldn't do it herself. She didn't come up with that. As soon as I flipped it round, so it's not, so I'm the person with the problem. I'm the person with the problem. Suddenly she knows what to do because it's dissociated. So that can be a good way. There is no harm in volunteering some information as well. You could say, actually, I remember I had a client very much like you. And what they found was that if they did this instead of that, that helped them in some way. Do you think that might work for you? So again, you could do it that way. If you like telling stories, you could do the whole thing metaphorically. So there's always another way. But the idea is the understanding with the 6-step reframe, right? You got part of them doing this, their unconscious mind's doing it. It's doing it for a purpose. It's got a positive intention. So we need to find other ways of achieving that positive intention. If you listen to John Grinder and he talks about working with alcohol, most people who are drinking, it's not about the alcohol, it's about relaxing. They can't relax. And he'll even say to them, you know what, I want you to keep drinking. I want you to keep drinking. And the person goes, but I came here to stop. And you go, no, I want you to keep drinking until we can come up with at least 3 new ways of helping you relax. Until then, keep drinking. So it's about coming up with those things, and you can come up with them in all sorts of ways. You could task the person, okay, I get that. I want you to go and research what are 3 other ways that other people have found that resolve this problem. Get them to make a list of friends who have them go around and ask friends, who do you know, if you had this problem, what would you do? And so they can come up with all sorts of things as well. And then you can go about installing them if you need to. But it's really the idea of just understanding that 6-step reframe is really just about finding out what's the intention and just coming up with another way of achieving that attention. And you can do it completely conversationally.
Thanks, Barry. I'm glad I asked that question. You gave me a lot there to work with. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yeah, Ricky.
Yeah, would any of these techniques work for somebody who has since birth some type of tremor, or like about to do a screening with someone who has they call it a palsy tremor that they've had since birth? Maybe.
The answer is maybe. If they can, in my opinion, if it gets worse at the time of stress, then it implies that there is a stress component to it. If you can find other ways of helping them to relax, right? But if you can get them to resist the urge and get them to do something else, a competing behavior, because of how the brain works with habituation, then that urge can't stay there for that period of time. Having said that, I have tried this with Parkinson's and it went down badly. Okay, so it didn't work. And I was really surprised. I thought it might have some help, because the reason I thought of even working with Parkinson's on it was because I'd had 2 occasions where I had smokers come in who had Parkinson's. And in the pre-talk, their hands are going like this, right? And I'm taking all the details and their hands are going like this. I now induce hypnosis. And it stopped. And I'm thinking, how the hell? How can that be that I've just done an induction and this neurological condition has stopped? That makes no sense. I can't get my head around that. So I thought, right, there must be something we can do. Well, I haven't found that way. But it really freaked me. It's like, I'm like, how the hell has just inducing hypnosis stopped that tremor? That makes no sense.
Did it stop for the whole session and then it came back after?
The whole session, the moment I merged them. What the fuck? I'm like, those sorts of things freak me out, and I get so curious because I wish I had a whole room full of people that I could test things on like that, because it makes no sense to me. But it happened twice, and I thought, wow, that's just not a coincidence. There's got to be something going on there.
Thanks.
But I would try. I wouldn't necessarily charge them a load of money. I'd say, look, okay, I'll take you on, because if it works, I'll learn something. I may be able to help other people. So, I do that for nothing. I wouldn't charge.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Great. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along. Hope you got something out of it. If you need any have any questions later, email me. I'm more than happy to answer them. I will be sending out the recording tomorrow. So, and Tracy, I will send out. I'll send out the manual for you as well. Oh, you found it, have you? Brilliant. Great. Okay. So thank you so much for your time. And again, if you need anything, just please let me know. All right. Great to see you all. Bye now.